Hello. Hello, everyone. Good to see you here, or we'll be joining shortly. It's been a while since I've done one of these. I know, it's crazy, but been working with CHONKER for a while on this one, so needed to get this out now that the farming contracts are done. That had a chance to go through them. The artists were able to get enough lead time on some of the NFTs, so that'll be ready. So, bam! We can now go through this. It's pretty straightforward. Yeah, I know. Finally got on live. I've been busy working on projects, making deals, doing negotiations, so that's why I've been, not handling any more audits, but I had talked with CHONKER a while ago, and have been owing this one to them for a while, so that's why I wanted to make sure I got this one taken care of. So we'll be working on getting back to the live streams, doing those audits. The Mimir Solutions sale is actually open, so huzzah, there's that. But I don't want to distract from CHONKER right now, so we are doing this. Oh, let me get CHONKER a link to the address. Ah, there we go. Ha ha ha. There we go. Yep. And with that, yep, here we are. Perfect. Alright, cool. So, with that, we can dig through the code. It's pretty short. I mean, there's not a whole lot of complexity here. Like my usual, we've got our standard libraries, not much to go through there, safe math, it's doing math, making sure we don't have computer glitches when we do math. Woohoo! Straightforward, good to see that. Then we've got, moving on down. Here we go. We've got our context, that provides nice security around accessing the message sender address, gets a little wrapped in another address here that can be worked with. That way you've got some, it's called a wrapper. Essentially, it's a way that, depending on what's going on in that address, you're not going to inadvertently let them into your memory space or anything to cause problems. So, good to see that's in there. Standard part of the ownership too. And boom, there's ownable. So yes, this is an owned contract. That makes sense for a farming contract, especially when they're going to have to offer different NFTs, make different changes, but that's why we're going to make sure that we double-check exactly what control the ownership has. Because it's not about whether there is or there isn't government or governance, it's about what the governance can do. Alright? So, standard implementation there, nothing strange or complicated going on. We can head on down to address, good to see the use of address. It's not always necessary. If you're just going to be using it for using addresses for storage and referencing to functions and such, it's not critical, but it is good to see it in there as it does provide some extra security, extra stability, and gives some extra capability to some of those, calls to other addresses, especially when, something might be a little risky to interact with. Mind you, we don't have that much complicated work going on in this because it's an NFT farming or purchase contract, so it's pretty straightforward. We've got the Ierc20. That's a standard interface for interacting with Ierc20 tokens. There's no intelligent interfaces, so there's no functionality, nothing special going in there. It's just, declaring what Ierc20 functions exist. That's all. Then we've got, moving on down, the Reentrancy Guard. Good to see this. Now, this is actually a contract that you inherit from, and it provides, this very basic modifier. So to remind people, modifiers, they are kind of like functions. You actually put them on other functions, and that way, whenever that function is called, the modifier is also called. So I think I've gone through reentrant or non-reentrant before, but let me be clear on what is happening here, because we're going to see that later on, and that way we can confirm how it's being used. So what this is doing a quick check. See, it's storing this variable here of not entered or entered for exactly what is, whether or not the function has already been called or not, and provides this status that gets updated every time a function is called. And so that way it adjusts that entry there. This way, if a address calls a function and then later on in that function, you were to call another function on that address, there's no way that they could do that old reentrancy attack and enter into the function again and have something happen. So this is actually what happened a while ago with the DAO, like the old DAO way back. That's how they were hacked. So this is a solution for that. What it does when you come in, it starts off with status being 1, and then, saying that it's not entered. And then you go through, it says that the function has been entered, so it changes it over to establish, all right, we have actually gone into the function. Then that little underscore and semicolon there, that means that it's saying, all right, go call the function that I'm put on. All right? So that's where, with non-reentrant, like with a modifier like non-reentrant, remember, you're putting that on another function. So when you call that function, it goes through, calls the modifier, comes back and calls the function. Well, the underscore semicolon, that's where you say, all right, go call the function that this has been placed on. And then, provided that function executes correctly, then it comes to the end where it resets the status to not entered. That way, if something goes wrong here, and somebody tries to come back in, well, this thing is going to have that check right at the top with the status and say, wait a minute, you already entered. So there's no way that you should be able to come back in and therefore, call this function again. So this is actually what protects against the reentrancy attack that has been plaguing so many contracts throughout time. There's a few other ways it can be handled, but this is the one out of Open Zeppelin. It's straightforward, it's rock solid, so good to see that being used. Now, there's another interface. Again, don't worry that it says Mint. As you can see, it's the interface for the iChonk NFT. And, well, that's how NFTs work. They get minted. You buy an NFT, it gets minted. Straightforward. So this is the interface for that NFT. And again, remember, interfaces, they don't have any intelligence. They're just telling you, when I'm dealing with another address and I say that it has implemented this interface, here are the functions that are there. Straightforward. And then we've got chunk farm. So now we're into the real core of what this is doing. Now, it's taking as its first argument that chunk address. So that way it's knowing, all right, this is the token that I'm supposed to be dealing with. Keeps track of that and is aware of what's happening. So it's storing that here, so you can also double check when this is deployed, make sure, like, hey, is this the right contract? And you can double check that by saying, well, does it actually accept chunk? For one. Also shows you the NFT address. So yes, you'll have it on the site. Yes, that'll be the one you're getting. But if you want to be absolutely sure, you can always come to Etherscan, look at the contract, see what the NFT address is that's been set in there, and double check. Be absolutely sure if you'd like. And I always recommend double checking these things. And you can see that this can be reused because, again, this is intended to be a farm where they will set that NFT address. So they'll have this contract out there, they can set the NFT address, and then that's the one that you'll be working with on this contract. So that means later on, if they want to change or need to change that NFT address, they can reuse this contract at another point, swap that over, sell you a different NFT. Now, this is set up to only sell one NFT at a time, so they might need to deploy multiple contracts if they were going to sell multiple NFTs at once. But really, that's just up to CHONKER on how they want to handle their model. They sometimes have a few NFTs, sometimes they only have one. All depends. In here, it's keeping track of that chonk balance and the last updated time and the points. So it's keeping track based on your address, what the chonk deposited has been or staked, when that was last updated, and keeping track of points for handling reward and getting your NFT out. Then we've got a modifier in here. Again, 2 events. Events are nice. I like to see contracts being vocal. I like to see them, stating what it is they're doing. So seeing a staked and withdrawn event, that's nice, especially since it's going to be reporting the user and the amount. One point here, just so you know, when it says indexed, that just means that you're telling the event, and therefore telling the blockchain, that you'd like it to actually show that address in something that's readable by a human being. Kind of. I mean, it's a bit more complicated what's going on there, but that's basically what it's saying. It's saying, hey, show this as, boom, the value that it actually is. Don't just pack it up in some hex code that's not possible for humans to read. Then we've got the update reward. So that is, well, it's accepting the address for an account. So we can see that it's a modifier, going to be applied to a few functions. We'll be able to see which ones in a moment. And that way, whenever that function gets called, it's going to make sure to update the reward for whatever account is calling that. See this very often in staking contracts. It's a way to very easily and simply, like if you go to withdrawal, it makes sure that the contract updates your reward just before you withdraw. And so that way you can always be sure that you're always going to get that last amount when it's coming to you. In this case, we can see that the update reward is based on your points that have been earned, and it's calculating that based on the amount earned by your account, and then updating that last update time to the block timestamp. So that way, in whatever math needs to be done with this, we'll see that in a moment, it actually stores that point, so that way, you don't have that chance that somebody's just going to keep calling it again and again and again and find out. This is actually going to take a look at the amount of time, and it's actually going to do that calculation. Okay, this is the last time we updated the reward. Let's go ahead and calculate how much time has gone by, and therefore give them more reward, or whatever is due. A bit different than those that count by block. This one is actually based on real, actual time being elapsed, not just when a block is mined. Pros and cons to both. They're both perfectly fine, just different ways of handling the math. As far as the balance, this is where you can call this contract and find out, all right, how much chonk have I deposited or have in this contract? So that's why it's keeping the chonk balance there. I want to be clear here. That's not your balance of chonk for your wallet. That's the balance of chonk that you have deposited in this contract. All right. Earned, well, we saw earned up here. It's what gets called in the modifier. And in earned, it's actually doing that math. Now, it's doing a few different things here, but it is clearly, as you see, taking the points that you've earned, and the math that it's doing here, where it's taking the block time, subtracting the last time that it was updated. That way, it's saying, look, I only need to account for the time since you were last rewarded. And if you're not aware, the way the time is calculated is as a Unix timestamp. It's just the number of seconds since 1970. So it's just a big number. That's why it's able to subtract out, all right, this last time you were updated, this is the time it is now, therefore the difference is that time difference. That also means that if it's still within the same amount of time, then this is going to, you're going to be subtracting the same number from the same number, and you're going to get nothing. Simple enough. That way we've got a nice protection to say, well, if you've already got a reward, and you've already earned some, we've already accounted for that, you can't just keep coming through and accumulating more and more and more and more. Then it does this multiply by 1 to the power of 18. Remember, we're dealing with, we don't have any floating point numbers in Solidity. We've got only only integers. And so that way we have to do some adjustment here to add on zeros, take off zeros, to try to move that decimal point around. And that's done very often in making sure the math is coming out correctly. So that's what's happening here. They want to convert that number, that amount over, they're getting the points, they're adding on an amount based on the time, then because the time is not, the same as a token amount, they're multiplying that by adding on the extra zeros, then they're dividing that by the amount of time that you're supposed to be accruing rewards, and then multiplying that by the balance of. And so they're looking to see, okay, in doing this balance of up here, how much chunk is in there. And again, in this case, they're dividing them by that. They're taking off those 18 zeros so that they're using the same number that you see in your wallet. Because that's basically what happens in your wallet. Your wallet's taking the amount that's being returned by the contract on the blockchain, taking off those extra zeros, and showing you that. So they're using the same one there. That way the numbers stay reasonable. It's a little easier to work with. So pretty straightforward process right there. Now, in here, oh yeah, they did. They launched the NFT for me. It's great. I got one. I got two more. And at the end of this, I'll be announcing who won that. The Chonk already did the drawing for that. And then I'll be contacting that person on Twitter and confirming their address and sending that over to them. So, doesn't look like we got a response just yet. But, don't think I'll be able to give that away right now on the stream just because they have to respond. But yep, I'll be getting their address and we'll be sending that over to them. Now we've got a second NFT that I've been given, but to make sure that we get things timed properly, we're actually going to hold off until the contract has been deployed. And then with that, we'll do another giveaway, very similar to what we had now. Pretty much the same thing, you know, the tweet, retweet, follow, that sort of thing. And then pick a random one out of that and give them the second NFT. So that way we can have the announcement now that the contracts are ready and they'll be deployed shortly. And then we can have that second giveaway when they're actually active. All right? So in here, they are doing some basic checks. This is how you're staking to get your chunk NFT. And so they're doing that check to say, okay, hold on, have you actually staked, you know, at least 2 chunk? Because you're not going to be able to get anything for anything less than 2 chunk. Straightforward. Also, got a limit on 10 chunk. So, you can't stake more than 10 chunk. Seems reasonable, seems fair. People can choose, you know, what rewards they want to get, how they want to stake, but there is an upper limit, so, you know, someone can't go buy out all the chunk and then churn through and farm everything. Everyone's got a chance to get something. But definitely looks like if you want to farm, you're going to want to get 10 chunk. Then you'll be at the top, the max possible to farm, and you'll be getting the most out of it. You'll probably be neck and neck with a bunch of other people, but, you know, it's a lot easier for people to get 10 chunk, you know, unless the price really, really goes up. Then from there, it's updating that chunk balance. So it's saying, all right, we need to keep track of what you've staked. We're going to do that here. We're going to do that by taking the amount that you already have deposited, and then we're going to add on the new amount. That way, if you come back and you stake more, like you start off with 2, then you go get 2 more, and then 2 more, and 2 more, and you do that 5 times, then boom, it'll get you up there. So, bam. Now, and because it's checking the balance that you have staked, not the amount just coming in, then it's going to be safe because you can't game this by just constantly staking small amounts again and again and again. Once you hit that point where you've staked 10, boom, you're done. You can't stake anymore. Pretty straightforward. And that's a reasonable way to make this a fair distribution, you know. There is still an incentive for staking more chunk, but there is an upper limit, so those that have way more can't, you know, progress too far, or can't get, like, way out ahead of people and, like, take control of everything. Then we've got an event going out. From here, it's doing that transfer from. So this is where it's going to be one of those processes where you have to approve the contract to transfer for you. And in doing that, then it's going to transfer the chunk from your wallet to itself and hold on to that. Pretty standard, and it's actually good to see them using that transfer from there. Then it's going to have... there it is. And in this case, we don't really need to worry about the safe transfer from, because this is chunk. Like, this contract knows chunk. It's working with chunk. And so it doesn't need to worry about what is on the other side of that transfer from. It's chunk. They know chunk. They know it's safe. So it's perfectly fine in that regard. And then it missed that little event to say that things were staked. Withdrawal, pretty much straightforward, much the same. Now on both of these, you have the update reward modifier. So, and you also have the non-reentrant. I'd say it's not absolutely essential that you have the non-reentrant, but it is a nice safety measure. That also means that if something were to be untoward, so you have the assurity that if something were to be untoward on that chunk address, the non-reentrant can't come back through either. Or I should say, it can't come back in through because of the non-reentrant. So we know it's safe because it's chunk, and you can double check that in the contract, and we know that it's safe, or as safe as it can be, because of the non-reentrant. So that's right. Again, always do your research, always double check, make sure that everything lines up properly before you stake into anything, and that's not just because of chunk, that's just everything out there. Always, always, always double check. But we have all the info, we can confirm exactly how things have been set, so I like that, and I like seeing the events there. That way people can double check. You can actually know how the contract's configured and what's going on and how it's behaving. So with the withdrawal, straightforward. It's also doing the check of updating the reward. It is also doing that check of, hey, do you have anything to actually reward? If you do, are you actually trying to remove an amount that you have? Because it's not going to let you, take out more than you have. So that's a very good basic check. And with the non-reentrant, now in here, we're actually not calling any addresses on an outside contract. I mean, chunk address, but, that's chunk. So I wouldn't consider that outside the ecosystem. So in this case, there's really not a chance for anything that a message sender is doing that could cause a reentrancy. But good to see that in there as an extra safeguard. I always take that stance, like, better safe than sorry. Might as well put all of those extra locks on everything and make sure it's all correct. All right? So in here, they do that transfer. They send you back your chunk, straightforward, and they update your chunk balance. Now, some might point out and go, well, ha-ha, we have the workflow weakness here that could cause that problem. Nope, because of the non-reentrant, it doesn't matter what order of operations these steps are being done in, because you can't come back in and exploit this. So, again, pretty straightforward. Exit is really just the withdrawing everything. As you can see, it's checking to see what your balance of stake chunk is, and then it's just calling withdraw and pulling everything out all at once. All right? And so this way, excuse me, you don't have to worry about sending in a particular value. Not absolutely necessary to have, the exit function there, but it does make things nice and easy for a front-end developer. Just know, oh, okay, great, I can just call exit. Or if something goes wrong, heaven forbid, dev dies, server bill doesn't get paid, site goes down, and you finally remember you have chunk, you're like, oh man, what do I do? Well, you can just, boom, go over here, pull out your chunk easily enough. I know, I don't mean to get morbid here, I'm just throwing out there that's one of the reasons why these things are easy. Makes things easy for the front-end devs, and makes it easier to interact with the contract if you prefer to go directly to the contract, or something horrible happens, there's a DDoS, complete failure of the hosting service, whatever. You don't have to wait for that to come back up. You don't have to try to figure out what your balance is, and boom, you can just come here and easily work with it. Now, down here, it's got an extra check where it's saying redeem cost. It looks like here in the cost, it is setting an ID. So in setting that ID, it's establishing, all right, this is the NFT that we're doing. That is the cost of that NFT. That way, they can update that as they set different NFTs and need to adjust that. And then redeem, again, showing that update reward. And in redeeming, they're going to do that check to see, okay, what is the price for that NFT that we're selling? Again, what we were setting up here in the redeem cost. So this is why the NFTs can have different prices, and they can be placed in there. And so in this case, it's going, here we are. We go, oh, yes. I like the chunk art too, and it's somewhat of a thrill factor. It's nice art. It's a nice group. I've been talking with the dev. Nice team. I don't know if I want to let too much out that we haven't confirmed, but we've got other promotional options open here, other things that are being considered, and so definitely keep an eye out for that upcoming giveaway. I'm still working out some details with folks, but we are working on ongoing promotions for my NFT, some other of the influencers' NFTs, for further promotions with Chunk, and so on. So there's a lot coming up here that we're still working out the details on. So I really don't want to say too much more. I don't want to overcommit people before we get that. But at the very least, I'm going to be doing stuff with the holders of my NFT. So if there's still one out there to buy, go grab it while it's cheap. I'll be doing stuff with that. Now, in the redeem, pretty straightforward. Like I said, it's checking that price of the redeem cost, confirming, okay, there is actually a card, so that way if somebody sends in an invalid value, it's just like, sorry, there's no card here because there's no price. Then it's looking at the points that you've accumulated, so that way when you stake, it's checking to see over time, all right, how many points have you accumulated? Remember, it's updating that with the update rewards, so when you come in to redeem, it's going to make sure that it updates those points for you. And this is how it's handling that farming process. You stake some chunk, you're going to accumulate chunk over time, or accumulate points over time. As you accumulate the points, you'll finally be able to reach the redeem cost, and then you'll be able to redeem it. This is where it's doing that check to say, all right, have you gotten enough points to be able to redeem this thing? Once you have, it actually calls mint on the NFT. So boom, creates one of those things, and the ID that's being created is going, oh, here is the boom nonce or unique identifier for that NFT, and setting up that particular identifier. So again, it's going off to the NFT. That's why they have to be minted. So don't worry, there's not an extra mint function in here for anything else. It's just going to be redeeming and boom, minting that off. And then, boom, at the end, it's updating your points by taking out what that price is. So that way, if you stake and you accumulate like a bazillion points, and then you buy something that's 1 point, then you're going to have a bazillion minus 1 points left over if you want to get more. So that's also nice. Also has that non-reentrant, so that way it doesn't matter what the order of operations is here. There's no way somebody could re-enter and like mint off a bunch of these things unless they actually have the points to pay for them. So, pretty straightforward, you know? Not a whole lot of, like, insanity in there. Not a whole lot of, like, complication. It's a really straightforward contract. And simplicity is good in these cases, you know? Now, that is the chunk farm. There is also the LP farm. Now, this one's very much the same. And to be honest, again, not that much to actually say about it. I'm not that that's bad. That's my point here, is that when a contract's simple and straightforward, that it's not doing too much in one go, it's really nice because there's less that could possibly go wrong. So, like before, Safe Math library, pretty standard, is the Open Zeppelin library. Same implementation, just doing math to make in a way that makes sure we don't have a bunch of computer glitches. Then we've got context. Again, it's that security matter. You know, it's going to be wrapping the address or the message sender and the data. So that way it provides some security there. And then we've got ownable. Again, straightforward implementation of ownable. You know, when it's deployed, that owner can make changes to it. We can find out who the owner is. Nothing strange going on there. Same thing with address. We already talked about that. Address is here too. Cool. Good to see that. So again, partners, I don't belabor the point too much on that. Those are just standard libraries out of Open Zeppelin. There's nothing weird going on there. Very straightforward. Then we've got the Ierc20 interface. This is just for interacting with ERC20s. Straightforward. And again, interfaces don't have any intelligence. This is just the standard implementation of Ierc20. We've got the Reentrancy Guard. Same thing as before. Nothing weird or special going on here. I talked about it a second ago. Again, for anyone that might have arrived late, it's just that check to say, all right, it's a modifier. When you call a function with this modifier, we're going to track whether or not you've already come into this function. And by having this check here where it modifies it after it's called the function, then if something happens with a malicious bit of code out there in the world that calls this, and it tries to do that reentrancy where it makes a call to come back into the contract, then this is going to butt up in there and say, well, wait a minute, you already came into this function, so you haven't left this function yet, therefore you shouldn't be able to come back into this function. So we're going to block that from going anywhere. And again, that iChonkNFT interface, it just exposes the mint function. Again, straightforward, simple enough. Then we get to the CHONKNFT farm. Now again, this one's marked the LP farm. And so this one, again, getting set for the chunk address, straightforward. Setting the NFT address, also straightforward. So this way they can have updates, have NFTs for LP tokens. They're doing the same thing. Again, that's why it might seem to be going a little fast here. It's a simple contract, it's straightforward, and because they're both kind of doing the same thing, but with slightly different tokens, then they're doing very much, the same thing. There's not a whole lot to repeat here. Keeping track of the address that you staked, keeping track of when you were last updated, keeping track of the points you accumulated. Bam, same thing. Same thing with the staked withdrawn, same thing with the update reward, same implementation, and making that call to earn to find out, all right, since we last checked your amount you should have earned, the points, then what should you have earned now? And let me go ahead and set that to your points now. So every time you interact with a function with update rewards, it's going to make sure that it actually, boom, updates your rewards. So pretty straightforward. Yeah, exactly. Simple, straightforward contract. I like that. There's not a whole lot of complexity. They don't need a lot of complex math. I mean, really, this here in earned is the most complicated math that's going on. And it may look a little intimidating because it's all strung together like that. But if you do something like this, and I'm a big fan of doing something like this to make that distinguishing point. If you do something like this, you can easily break out and see, okay, there's how they're handling the math. And we can confirm, like, yep, there we go, and see, Here, the division is being done out of your balance, and again, they're just taking off those zeros. So when you see this multiply by 1 to the 18th, or divide by 1 to the 18th, remember, like I said before, but for anyone that arrived late, we're dealing with integers. We do not have floating point numbers in Solidity, therefore we kind of have to move the decimal point around by adding or subtracting zeros. And that's what's happening here. They're adding zeros on because, well, that's how most tokens are. They have 18 decimal places. Or they're taking zeros off because they need to get a smaller number to do some of the math. So, pretty straightforward there where they're just handling that. Easy enough. So, in here, again, straightforward implementation on the earn. Same thing that we saw before. And with stake, same thing we see here. Only difference being is that there's a cap on 5 LP, so you have to stake at least 1 LP, and you can stake up to 5 LP, but otherwise, the logic is exactly the same. Nothing weird or special going on here. Same setup, really. I mean, that's about it. In this case, it's going to be transferring and that chunk over, so boom, straightforward. Then in here, it's going to be, and in this case, when they set that chunk address, they're meaning the chunk LP address to confirm, okay, you've got LP tokens, we're going to pass that in. So that's one thing you can double check in doing your own research. Make sure which contract you're interacting with. Make sure, okay, this one actually is the LP one. But again, the site will be fine. It's always been fine with these guys, and these seem to be stand-up guys. Like I said, we've been talking about possible future plans for things too. Withdrawal, same thing. I mean, I really don't know what to say here. I could repeat myself. As you can see, it's literally the same logic. It just goes through, just double checks that you actually have something to withdraw, actually handles that withdrawal, and on both of these, it's got that non-reentrant modifier, so that way we don't have an exploit here. Nobody can pull some shenanigans and come back in and alter things. Then we got that exit, same as before. I really could just say that for the whole thing, which is good because it's solid proven code. And so really, I mean, honestly, this doesn't have to be two separate contracts. It's kept separate to kind of indicate, they did that to kind of indicate to me, all right, here's the one we're going to use for farming chunk, here's the one we're going to use for farming with the LP tokens. But honestly, as you can see, they're the same thing. They're intended to handle one token coming in and send out one NFT, therefore, really, they could just deploy the same contract again and again and again for each one. It's all very straightforward. So, the same code, essentially. I mean, really, it is the same code. Only difference is the name, and the only reason the names are different is to really keep track of, you know, the fact that we're deploying them and they're going to be staking different amounts. So, that's about it. I mean, I really don't have much more to say. There's not much more to talk about, honestly. Other than, I like the NFTs, I like the art, I like the devs. Talking with the devs has been great. Like I said, we got some plans for things. Don't want to say too much because I don't want to overcommit people, but I do want to work with them further on some promotional points and definitely have some ideas for doing things for some of my upcoming projects, so we'll be trying to work that out. And otherwise, straightforward implementation. I like to see that it's very simple, that there's nothing weird or complicated going on, so there's very little that could go wrong, and the math is being done safely. You know, the moving the decimal point is being done safely, and I mean, just a personal point, I kind of like to see, you know, things like that cap here. Now, I know on a lot of my projects, and some I've talked about, you know, we don't necessarily have a hard cap, but that's partly because we're doing a lot of weird, complicated math to make that less of a problem, really. When dealing with something like this, it definitely makes sense to have a cap on something like that. That way you can ensure that things are staked for an amount of time, and that way you can make sure that, you know, some whale doesn't come in, buy up everything, and then, boom, dump everything in and take over. So, again, pretty straightforward. So, yeah, like I said, simple, straightforward. There's really nowhere where anything can go wrong. I mean, that's about it. I couldn't really think of a better way to write a contract. I mean, other than trying to maybe unify all the farms into one contract, but that would have its own problem of adding extra complexity, extra things that go wrong. So I don't begrudge a dev for saying, you know what, let's go ahead and break it out. Let's have one contract per farm. It does keep things nice and easy and does, well, minimize the chance of errors because there's just less stuff going on, which I always like the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. So, I, man, it's not a big, long, complicated thing. I wish there was a lot more for me to say. It's a straightforward implementation. There's nothing crazy going on there. So, I mean, I don't have a whole lot of time here. I don't have a whole lot to say to eat up time. I know it might seem to be kind of a short stream, so that's where I'll just leave it as we've got the announcement on who won. And so that's where, let me pull that up again. We have at Earl Laston. Yeah, at Earl Laston on Twitter. So, Earl, I don't know if you're here in the stream. I will be contacting you to get your address and to confirm that, yes, you have won, and to make sure that I get that transferred over to you. So, let me confirm that they have. Let me see if they're available here, if I just poke them real quick. Like I said, we don't know where they are. They could be all over the place, so, you know, we might need to come back from that. So, there we go. Otherwise, that's about it. Pretty straightforward. Yeah, congratulations, Earl. Yeah, the whole... Yeah, my NFT sold out real quick, which was very flattering. So we'll be giving away that other one as soon as Earl gets back to me and transfer that over to them. And, well, there are 3 more out there. 2 are listed on OpenSea, so you could go buy them there. Those will be the only ones ever made. No more than those 6, and I'm holding on to mine forever, because, like, come on. I mean, I have an NFT of me. Of course I'm going to hold on to it forever. Jesus. But otherwise, you know, like I said, no errors, no problems, nothing go wrong. Oh, gotta get that bat. But otherwise, that's about it. Now, I'm sure some of you might have heard. That's why I wanted to get through Chunk, make sure they got their limelight. This is all about them, and they got their info. But that is also where I wanted to, you know, just make the mention, since I'm here, that, you know, I did launch the token for my DAO today, and that sale is actually going on at this moment. So, I'm going to be putting the announcement out on Twitter in a little bit here, but you can see the sale going on there. If you can just literally send ETH to the address to buy in on the sale. It's going on for 3 days, bonding curve price, so it'll be going for the entire 3 days, and the portion of the proceeds, half the proceeds will be going into liquidity, the other half will be divided up into the DAO treasury for voting on spending, and then anyone that buys in on the pre-sale will be in the snapshot of pre-sale buyers, and we'll be taking votes and considering, you know, what extra benefits can be provided to pre-sale buyers. It's partly being done that way because as a DAO, acting as an incubator, handling several other projects, that exactly what that benefit is going to vary from project to project. You know, different ones are going to have different things that would be beneficial. Maybe it's some governance tokens, maybe it's access to a special super secret early pre-sale for that thing. We'll have to work that out for each of the projects as they go through, again, depending on exactly what they are. But we'll be keeping that information, and so that way, I know some people are looking at it and they're like, well, wait a minute, if I buy now during the pre-sale, it actually works out to be less than if I just bought it on the open market. You're right. That's why we're keeping that snapshot of pre-sale buyers, keeping a list of what addresses are there, and that way, based on what future projects do, what the results of that are, what the terms of that project are, we'll be having special consideration for those pre-sale buyers. All right? So, with that, I'm sorry it's so short. I mean, I don't know what else to say other than Chonk, other than it's so simple and straightforward. It doesn't take me long to get through the code, and there's really nothing that can go wrong. So, that's about it. I mean, I almost feel bad making it such a short deal, but there's nothing else to say. I can just keep sitting here telling you, like, it's solid, it's simple, it's straightforward, and there we go. Oh, I want to say, if you want to, rather than tips, go buy the DAO token. The link I just put on Etherscan, that's to the sales contract. You can just send ETH to that contract. You don't need to send me tips. Go send it there. Get the Mimir Solutions DAO token, and we're negotiating with Chonk on deals and promotional partnerships there. So we're hoping they'll be involved. Talking with several other groups. The DAO proposal, I'll be putting the announcement out on Twitter shortly. Just kind of wanted to give a chance for the people in the TG group and the people that come on my stream to get that heads up on what's coming up there. But don't worry about timing. You don't have to rush. I mean, yeah, obviously I want you to ape in, duh. But you don't have to worry about getting in earlier than others. It's not going to change the price for you. You don't have to worry about missing out on a cap. It's a bonding curve. It goes for the whole 3 days. And because all of this is being done to get funding for the DAO, and yes, you will get tokens to trade. All right, there is tokens that you will be able to trade. Because we're working on getting funding for the DAO, because you'll be able to vote on how that treasury is spent, then boom, we will handle, you'll be having that future say in what I do and what Mimir Solutions does in general. And we'll be posting more information on what did the tokens offer. They offer voting rights in the Mimir Solutions DAO. There is if you haven't been following it, then it's been all over my Twitter, but let me see if I can find some of the announcements here. Where did I put that window? Oh, windows wander around and I've got too many windows open. Let me see here. Now, when I say governance on that, what I mean, what are you going to be governing? Well, what you will be governing is what is here in the proposal. Let me get the link here. It takes so long to load. Come on, Google. Make it faster. Come on. There we go. What you'll be governing is things like, bam, what is there in that document. So we're already working with several projects. OnReach is working with us. We have NFY on board. We have IYF. Been talking with CHONKER about handling promotional things, stuff like that. Yep, first one from me. First one is a DAO. What's laid out there is all the projects we'll be working with. So that's OnReach. They're doing telco peerage debt in tokenized form. Basically a way to provide liquidity to settle the traffic fees that are owed to telco companies so they can get paid early and then you can get paid later on when the debt is actually paid. So that one's actually a registered security. They'll also be helping and providing insurance for the projects we're working on. There's Telecos DAO and Audit DAO. Didn't forget about Audit DAO. Didn't leave it behind. Still working on it. And it's now actually going to be partnered and working with Mimir Solutions, helping define security standard for our projects. That way OnReach can use that standard for handling underwriting. There's NFY. NFY is on board. Jeff is having me take care of management. We're going to be working on integrations with the other projects. So everything's staying the same with NFY, other than we are adding more features to the NFTs wrapping tokens there. For IYF, they are intended to be an arbitrage system and a platform for staking into things. We're going to be working with them. It's still pending the community vote, but so far it's been nearly 100% the entire time the vote has been up. So we both feel comfortable saying that it's going to go ahead, but technically just want to leave that there, that, it's technically up to the community. We're still waiting for the vote to finish, but I see no indication that it's going to fail. That the vote's going to fail. It looks like it's going to go through. I'd have to double check the token allotment in the latest announcement. Then after that is one I've been talking about for a while, Chains, rebranding that to Pantheon. Same basic premise, using EFI tokens and DEX pairs to manage assets, coordinate trading, and reap more rewards from staking into various contracts and executing various trades. Basically, it's a way to kind of buy into the DeFi version of a mutual fund, a mutual pool, and in doing that can, basically accrue more Pantheon as more assets come under management, and you'll be able to vote and stake on how those sort of trades are going on. Then there's the Eris, Ample, Velo, Priya. Those are going to be some of our reserve currencies. Eris is the one I've been working on. The other ones we're just going to, sell Eris and buy those as needed and accept them as deposits. Then there's Lucent. Lucent's actually a fork of Bitcoin with smart contract capability. There's a lot of work I've been doing for cross-chain and decentralized tech. So I already have a deal with Lucent where we're going to work on their blockchain and possibly re-engineer it, redesign it, making sure that all the current miners, all the current holders are properly taken care of, and basically be able to build out some more second layer type tech that we're looking for, which comes to rules. Rules is another project I've been working on for Under Mimir Solutions, and that's part of why we need to do this sale, because as you see, I got a lot of ideas. I can spend a lot of time doing this. We need staff. This is to get the funding to get that staff. Rules is about using rules engines in an Oracleized format to provide complex data processing that couldn't be done on-chain because either it doesn't have access to the data or the amount of processing would be necessary would actually reach the gas limit, because there's some things that a contract might want to do that it literally, like, doesn't matter how much data it has access to, it just can't do those sorts of calculations because there's a gas limit. There's only so much that they can process and how much they can store. And so they can offload some of that processing onto the rules engine to have some of that work done. That's also where the work with Lucent is coming through. That's also where the work with Lucent is coming through, because we want to iterate on that rules engine. Now, this is a proven technology on the rules engine. I want to assert that here is I'm not inventing a rules engine. I'm using a rules engine that I have worked with for a little over a decade now. It's a proven rules engine. It's called PAM from Red Hat. It's based on Drools, the open source language, Drools, and there will be a site coming up shortly to lay out more details on this, provide the necessary links, but quite literally the link that I showed before, you can just send ETH to that. It is a contract, so make sure you turn your gas limit up a bit higher. That way it can actually process things, but you can just, boom, send it over there. So yeah, applying proven rules engine technology through oracles on-chain. Intention is to iterate that through with Lucent, and hopefully work on, I've actually already contacted Umbrella Network. They're interested in, getting access to that and having that incorporated in theirs. I'll be looking to contact Chainlink and see about adding it in there. I'd really like to be able to iterate through and decentralize the rules engine. That way we're not coming from a single source of truth. We can actually distribute that out, have multiple nodes processing the same rules, compare answers, that sort of thing. Then there's Rug Radar. If you don't know the drama that went on there was a token called UNCO, U-N-C-O. Dev scammed in the sense that they put out the token, took the proceeds, and then wandered away and never did anything with the project and left people holding the bag. And so a guy over there, TW, real stand-up guy, stood up, paid a dev, developed Rug Radar. It's a JavaScript static code analysis tool that's running in the browser. Speaking with TW, they decided to just hand over ownership of Rug Radar to me and management of UNCO. Haven't forgotten about the UNCO guys that might be out there. Coming back to that, a lot of work to do on that regard, but that is one where that ties in with an idea I've had for a while to build out a public testing system, so that way you can go to a website, you can see reports. This also ties in with Audit DAO's work of recording audits on chain, storing them in IPFS. I want to combine all of that together and give you as automated a process as possible, where you can just pay a small fee of either UNCO and or Rug Radar token. We're going to work out the tokenomics, do it in such a way that we're not screwing the UNCO people, and that way you can pay a small fee in the token, have a contract address scanned. We can provide you that report on the security of the contract. It's not gospel, obviously. Very, very often things will take a human review, but at the very least we can give you that first check of, does this thing have any glaring vulnerabilities, and you should stay away. Might be some false positives. We'll work on identifying those and work out ways to say for a contract, okay, we know this one's safe because a human went through it, and we know it's producing a false positive. That's fine. We've identified that and dealt with it. And then there's Learn and Know. That is another idea I've been working on for quite a while. Actually, some of these have been in the works for like a couple years. Some have been in the works for like 6 to 8 months. Some I came up with relatively quickly. So they're all kind of coming together here. Learn and Know is an idea I've been working on for quite a while. That one's been like a couple years now, on tokenizing education. and skill verification certification. And so the idea being that, people can pay for education with no, teachers can get paid in education with no, there can be an escrowing and vetting process to make sure that, teachers are actually teaching, students are actually doing the work. If not, people forfeit no, or they get a refund. And then, learn, and then no being that method of tracking teacher and student reputation and being able to define certifications. So the idea being that, like, if I'm a vendor or, Audit DAO, certifying auditors, we can produce that no verification NFT, so that way you can look at their wallet, you can confirm, all right, whoever has access to this wallet is verified and certified as an auditor by these people, or they're certified in these skills, which then can provide a way for other systems to check that. Maybe we've got a system that, like with Audit DAO, we want to say, hey, auditors, you can interact with the smart contract platform to record audits. We don't want anyone to just be able to record. We want only certified auditors to be able to record. Now we have a way on chain to say, well, that's your auditor wallet, where that address has the certification NFT. You've kept up on with that, and we can check that to see, yep, you are actually a certified auditor, therefore you're allowed to make a record. And that can extend out to other things. You can be the computer science certification. You can have the AWS certification. We're working on all of those deals to try to move certification on chain for that verification and research. Pam. Yes. And yes, Red Hat is good. Yes, I'm a freelance contractor with Red Hat. I've worked with several consulting firms that have grown out of Red Hat. That, very typically with Red Hat, they've got a partners program, so like employees of Red Hat right out of college will at some point want to start their own consulting firm. They'll go off and start that. I very often go from one consulting firm to another as they're starting up, help them get built out, help them get to a stable point, and then kind of just, generally my rule is once there's an HR department, you're large enough you don't need me anymore, and I just move on to something else. And so I've actually worked with Red Hat for quite a while, and I actually have several family members that work at Red Hat, and some that are actually directors at Red Hat. So I work with Red Hat extensively, have worked with them from like day one, pretty much, and yeah, so I know their products well. So yeah, that's why I'm using Pam and pulling that in. So, but yes, thank you for chiming in there and backing me up on that. That, yeah, Pam is a great product. I've worked with it for the past several versions now. I worked with it back when it was BPMS. But you know what? I got front-end devs working on the site. We're going to have write-ups on all of that, links to everything. That way everyone can see the documentation. And those who have been following, you saw my stream a while ago where I doxed myself a while back. I'll be making sure to have links on there so people can verify that, yep, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. He has actually worked with this stuff for a while. And info on all the various products that we'll be using. So that's one point with rules is, like, some of these, as you can see, kind of long-term projects require a fair bit of staff. On the matter of rules, part of why there's a minimum on the sale for my token, and when we do the sale of the rules governance token, that one's also going to have a minimum, because I've already negotiated with a consulting firm that I've worked with in the past and actually mentored. I've trained and mentored everyone in that company. So they are perfectly happy to take the contract from me to come and build out the rules engine. And it's something that I've worked with for about 10 years. Between them, they've worked with that rules engine for several years each. So relatively easily, once we have the budget to afford the contract, then boom, we can hire them. They've got staff sitting by because of the whole COVID deal, where there's just not that much work, and they can, boom, get the ball rolling. We can, because it's already designed to work with HTTP, then we can just stick that behind an Oracle. So really, it's going to be kind of a chase between, like, once we have the funding, who can get done first? The team working on rules or the team working on the Pantheon, IYF, NFY integration. On top of that, also been in talks with Cover about Audit DAO. They approached me to ask if I wanted to be involved with the little consortium of auditors they're putting together to help set the standard for them. I updated them and said, hey, I'm putting together Audit DAO. That's exactly what Audit DAO does. We still need to go through more talks. I won't say it's a commitment, but we have more meetings, actually today and coming up, to try to work out some of those details. But it's looking pretty good that Audit DAO will be the organization that Cover and OnReach uses to help set the standard for their DeFi investment insurance that they're going to be offering. And Audit DAO is not setting the standard. Audit DAO is coordinating between firms of auditors and software professionals to help set that standard. And we're going to be making a point of giving due consideration to freelance people, to the firms, but we want to make sure that, nobody's got undue control and that we've got a good, solid set of security standards. And that is something that Mimir Solutions will be adhering to. Any project that comes through us, we're going to be saying, you've got to meet that standard. And if you meet that standard, then OnReach and or Cover will insure you. I say and or because OnReach they're fully regulated, as in they are licensed, they are docs companies, they are full corporations, and thus there are some projects that they just won't be able to insure for regulatory reasons, but that's what Cover's for. And then there's some stuff that Cover might not be able to insure because, it's on a different chain, or it's following a different investment technology, and it's just like, well, it doesn't quite fit into Cover's tokenomics, and therefore, Cover might not be able to provide insurance, but OnReach can. And for those projects that they can get them from both, fantastic. We'll have 2 layers of coverage, and so it'll be based on each of those. So, yeah, Mimir Solutions, it is working on all of this. It is partnered with every single one of these groups, and we'll be working on all of these projects. So, by all means, come on in, help me fund Mimir Solutions, help me get off the ground, where I'm working real hard to convince Chonk to be our promotional arm and to keep this sort of promotion going here. So we'll likely be having that moving forward. And yes, if you look at the distribution from some of the Google Sheets, technically, if you buy in early during the pre-sale, you're paying a slightly higher price than what you're paying later on. That is because we're taking a snapshot of everyone that buys during the pre-sale, and as we go through projects, depending on what's appropriate for the future project, we'll have extra consideration for those that bought in early. So I know the price is a little higher when you buy first off the bat, but partly we need to make sure we get the funding. Second, we're going to be having that special consideration later on. It's just not really possible to define strictly what that is, because that's going to vary from project to project. And we're an incubator DAO where these aren't the only things we're working on. We're going to have more projects come in. We're going to be working with new teams, new DeFi projects, new technology. So as they come through, we'll be having to figure out and have community votes on here's what any holder of Mimir might get. Here's what Mimir might have in the deal. And by the way, here is the special consideration for early pre-sale buyers based on that address. And so we'll actually be working out and maintaining a list of that, have part of our site, the contract, so that way if you need to change wallet addresses for some reason, or you want to register a different one for whatever reason, we'll have the addresses in there. You can come in, update your address. But yeah, you'll want to buy during the pre-sale, even though the price is a little higher, because that's going to have you can think of it kind of like partner access. If this were a company, an actual firm, you could think that buying after the pre-sale is like buying shares. You're just Joe Schmo getting shares. If you buy during the pre-sale, it's more like being a partner in the company. Now, to be very clear here in the organization, there is a governance, there is a DAO above that is made up of the actual representatives of the projects here. So, OnReach is sitting on that board, Teleco's DAO is sitting on that board, IYF, NFY. That's being done because we're going to have so many projects coming through, so many different votes. We need to have that oversight on legal matters. We need to be able to get the legal consultation, so that way, if for some reason, somebody with malicious intent comes in, some whale that just wants to fuck things up, buys a bunch of Mimir tokens, comes in, pushes through a vote that's just completely illegal, then at least we have that oversight from the governing board to say, yeah, sorry, no, we don't give a shit what you voted for. You're asking us to break the law. The DAO's not going to break the law. Boom, here, we're not doing that. And we can provide that explanation. But that's really all it's for. and to be able to vote on transferring funds from the community treasury to the DAO treasury, and then the DAO can be that smaller, more agile group that can execute things right away. So that way you don't have to consult. We can consult the community on the broad stretches, the broad strokes, the prioritization, and then when it comes down to the day-to-day operations, we can vote amongst ourselves on the board and execute on that for you. So, yeah, that's the whole thing. These are basically the projects I've been working on and thinking of. So for all of you that's been worrying, where has he been? Why has he been so busy? And why have there been audits? It's because of all of this. I have been designing things, doing test code, talking to people, getting partnerships, getting commitment. Got several other people on board. There's some freelance auditors like Deadface, Vidar. Talked with them. They are interested in joining. We're still going to work out details, obviously. So again, please don't, necessarily take that as a solid commitment or promise from anyone. But I've also been talking with several other people on basically getting involved, to help out with Audit down, defining that standard, or to help out with, building out that incubator. So, Corey, how's it going? Sorry you came in late. You just came in, right at the end of a big, long announcement. If you scroll up through the chat, there's the link to the Google Doc for the DAO proposal that I've been working on. Already have partnerships with everyone on that list. And already have negotiations and work talks being done with Cover for providing insurance for these projects, and we'll be continuing on. There's already a pre-sale going there. That's also, if you scroll up, that Etherscan link for governance tokens there. You just send ETH straight to that contract, and at the end of 3 days, you'll be able to come back and claim. Front end is finishing some small modifications. I had some last minute changes I wanted to do to add in, how we were handling the various proposals to make it a little more presentable, so it wasn't just one giant wall of text, and that's taking a little longer to get done. So kind of my bad for delaying things there, but we'll have that up later today. I'll make sure to tweet all of that out. I've been doing staggered announcements here on the stream, here in the Telegram group, and some of my Discord groups to give you guys the head start. And then later on, we'll be doing that announcement on Twitter, so feel free to spread it around. Feel free to tweet it out yourselves if you'd like. I'm not telling anybody not to do anything, but I wanted to give you guys the heads up. There's no problem in buying in now, no problem buying in later. It's not going to adjust anything. In fact, it'll actually end up lowering everyone's price as more and more is paid in. So you kind of want to get a bunch of people in there. If we get enough people in, then that can drop the price precipitously for everyone, and the amount that you'll be getting will be adjusted too, because we're doing it on a bonding curve price. And I want to give, again, that heads up for everyone that, yes, if you look at the distributions and such, yes, technically, if you buy during the pre-sale, you are paying more now than it would be when it's listed on the exchange. That is because we are keeping track. We're taking that snapshot of people that bought during the pre-sale, and based on that snapshot, we're going to be kind of considering those people partners in the DAO. As in, we're going to get special consideration, special access. It'll vary depending on project, because we're considering this long term. We're going to iterate through multiple projects and just keep this going, even after we finish the ones that we either negotiated partnerships with right off the bat, or will be continuing, that I've thought up and will be continuing work on. And so, if you get in now, then you'll have that special consideration. Now, that's why I also want to highlight and bring that up, because this is not pump and dump. This is not something, by all means, go all in. I'm not necessarily going to tell you not to, but I want to give you the heads up that Mimir is not going to be, a thing that pays off in, moon bucks in a few days or even a few weeks, right? This is a long play, getting a say in how a DAO that is acting as an incubator, that is negotiating partnerships with Cover, negotiating partnerships with Umbrella Network, already has a partnership with OnRange for providing investment insurance, and already has several projects lined up so that you can have a say in that, have some control over the budget of how that's spent. So things like prioritization, certain features, things like, you'll be having a portion of the proceeds in a community treasury that you can manage. So you'll have votes on that. So you'll be, if you get on the pre-sale, you'll be kind of that, partner status. We will also have votes for those that buy later on from the exchange, but again, we're kind of making that distinction between them. So just want to give that heads up for anyone that's like, I know, I'll go all in, flip this in a week and make mad money, I want to advise you, maybe hold off a little bit. Like, by all means, buy some. I'm telling you not to, but, like, don't expect that you're going to flip this thing and make 10x inside a week or two, because this is a long play. This is about making sure that you get good, reliable projects over a long period of time that you can reliably invest in, that we know they'll have investment insurance, we know that they will be built securely, we will have the necessary standard and teams in there to get you that coverage, get you that security. So again, I want to be clear here. There is not a direct revenue from Mimir. We can do buybacks, we can do special access to pre-sales, we can do grants out of tokens that come from helping projects, because, we're going to be negotiating that sort of thing with projects that come through. But I just want to give that heads up. Like, don't throw all of your ETH in here and then expect it to 10x in a week and then have something to invest in, all right? Because this is a long-term access. So we do need funding, we do need budget, we can do buybacks, we can do dispersals, but I just want to give that heads up to people on what to expect with this. This is if you think of it, this is kind of like buying a seat on the board of Prudential. So being able to tell Prudential, like, what to do with money. You're going to be telling us what to do with the money. And this is where sales that we do, proceeds that we do directly, will kind of go off into the community treasury, or at least a portion of that, so that way you can vote on how that's being done. All right? So yes, long-term investment. And that is, well, that's about it. And again, long-term investment, because you're making sure that we can make sure that we will have the ability to make sure that you have future projects that can be invested in. And like I said, there can be token grants, airdrops. It's all going to vary on long-term is 5 days. Let me put it this way. Long-term is probably when we deliver our next few projects. Governance token for Regula will be coming up. Then there will be Eris and Pantheon, along with NFY and IYF, and the enhancements that we're doing there. But yeah, to be clear, like, that's going to be a ways off, and we're probably looking at like 2 or 3 months at least for some of that stuff to deliver. But again, it all depends on how much funding we can get and how quickly we can find more devs to hire. I've already got a team working on it, but, we'll be coming in with that. All right? So, with that, I thank you for joining me. I hope I didn't steal too much of Chonk's thunder, partly because everything I'm announcing with, like I said, I've been talking with Chonk. I want them to be our marketing arm. I love their work. I love the way they've operated, and so that's where, this is also part of Chonk. The only reason I haven't put them down the list is because we need to kind of work out some of those confirmations, confirm that, they're on board and exactly what those terms are. So, the EFI token, that is going to be Pantheon. Pantheon is one of the EFI tokens I'm working on. Eris is also kind of an EFI token. Actually, basically, Eris is also an EFI token. But with Eris, I'm doing that that streamlined yield farming of transfer fees through just shares of Eris. So it uses EFI techniques to have that streamlined, seamless yield farming. And so that's where, and I've been working on Eris for quite a while now. I've been working on, first it was Chains, then it turned into Eris as an option and a modification of it, and then Chains got rebranded to Pantheon, and I'm still doing Chains and doing Eris together, because I need a lot of reserve currencies to work with things. And that's why it's been kind of funny that, like, we see all these streamlined stuff, like Priya's out there sharing transfer fees, and they're doing it through an airdrop, and I thought, that's nice. I like Mantis. Mantis is cool, but I thought, you know what? I can do one better. Not that Mantis is wrong. Like, he wanted to hit the last 200 transactions, but I'm like, I think I can make that better. And so I was working on Eris. That's where, like, some of the other tokens that come out, I will not mention names at the moment, that have done it. I find it kind of funny, because I'm like, I was doing that like a full month or two before you were. Funny that. I guess I should have launched a while ago. But this is what I get from wanting to launch an entire ecosystem, So there we go. So where were we? Oh, yes. There you are. So for that, again, you got the links up there up above for sales contracts. I'll be following up when Chonk releases their contracts, so we'll be announcing that. We'll do another giveaway of the second NFT of mine, my Coyote NFT, when Chonk launches their contract. And so right now, we already have the winner for one of them now, and have that message out to that person. We'll be waiting to get their message back, and well, looks like they're not available at the moment on Twitter, so we'll get that answer. All right, cool. Otherwise, thank you all for joining me. Thank you for giving me your time. I appreciate it. You got the links there for the making that donation to the contract, and otherwise, just to be sure people have that link here, you can always just send ETH to that contract address. Straightforward. All you need to do is, well, literally send ETH. Just make sure that you turn up the gas limit, not the gas fee, the gas limit. And that way you can, actually get the transaction through. But it really is that simple. It's just boom, send it in, and provided we hit the 600 Ether minimum needed to meet several of the budgets available, or that are set for several of the projects, already got dev teams and consulting firms lined up, then we'll be ready to go. If we do not hit that 600 Ether limit, that's fine. You can still come back at the end of the sale, claim your Ether back, and we'll figure it out. All right? Question. Sure, go ahead and shoot. I will answer the question, and then I should probably get going. I know there's a time delay, so we'll give some time for the question to come in, and they'll answer that, and then I will get back to work on things. Yep, there we are. Alright, so question. Seems like it's ready for guys, smart. Oh, what happened with Core? Well, what happened with Core is that I told everyone that there was a minting function in there, and I said it was a risk, but just having a minting function in and of itself is not necessarily a scam. It's a giant fucking risk, but it's not necessarily a scam depending on how it's answered. So I mentioned that there was the minting function. I said it was a risk. I said it was up to people as to whether or not they trusted the devs and would want to buy in. But otherwise, the code was stable, as in it would work as intended, and there wasn't a way anyone could hack it. So some people just, they weren't that concerned about the minting function, or they somehow missed it. I will admit that I did take the education from Core, and that's kind of why I was holding off on more audits, because I needed to refine my process, and part of that is going to be working up reports, and that's part of why I'm pushing forward with the completion of the Audit DAO on-chain audit verification platform, so that way we can record with links to IPFS records of the audits. That way, somebody doesn't miss me taking 2 to 5 minutes explaining that there's a mint function in the middle of a video and not understanding what that is. So that's the Core is that point of, all right, just saying there's a mint function and that it's a risk is obviously not enough. People need more. I need to be more secure on that, and therefore I'll be coming back on that and updating that process. So that's literally what happened there. Is I went through the code, pointed out, hey, there's a mint function. Mint functions are a risk. The code functions, the distribution of tokens is fine, but mint function may or may not be bad. It depends on what the model is, and there are conceivable reasons why somebody might want to mint more tokens. So that was an educational point to say, all right, got it. Doing a video is not enough. People like it. People find it interesting, and it does help explain things the way I've been going through stuff, but there needs to be a more official long-term record that's easier for people to get through. Hence, that's one of the reasons why I've been holding off on audits, working on refining the process, and working on getting the technology developed so that we can have a better reporting process there. So, how? Oh, how are mint functions a risk? Mint functions are a risk in that if the owner has the ability to just make more tokens, then they could do something like, I'm selling you a token, I'm telling you that it has a 10,000 supply, look at where all the tokens are. See, there's tokens in all these different addresses. I as the dev don't own a bunch of tokens. All the tokens are in LP. Oh, look, the liquidity's locked. We can't rug pull you there. And then they can secretly come in and be like, haha, I sold everyone 10,000 tokens. Boom, I'm going to print 20,000 tokens or mint 20,000 tokens and then sell those on the market and boom, suck up all of that liquidity that's there. And so it's kind of like a rug pull and a dump all in one. Because they can just like, well, surprise, there aren't only 10,000 tokens. There's now 1,000,000 of them, and I'm using the other, however many, 990,000 of them to buy all of the ETH off the market. So that's how it's a risk for everyone. So, and that's why, but the thing is, there can be projects where it's reasonable. Like Seal, they mint tokens as part of their model. It's intended, and it's secure in the contract because, the contract is the owner can't come in. Well, now they can't because they put governance in. But, the contract is the one that's handling it. Like, as an example, Weth. Weth is literally minting Weth tokens when you send it Ethereum. So, and in Eris, I actually have the model that the way we're handling the sale there, one of the ways we can acquire new assets is by opening up and having secondary sales of Eris for additional tokens. And the way I'm handling the Eris sales is it literally mints tokens based on how much has been paid in. So, but that's part of where I'm securing that model and putting it all in so that it's controlled by the contract. No human being will just be able to mint more tokens. And we'll have governance. In fact, that's part of what Mimir's for, is to help provide that community oversight, get the various multi-sigs in place, so that if we want to open up and have another sale of Eris, you guys are the ones that decide, and I need your authorization to be able to open that up and have another sale of Eris where we will mint more Eris. But again, that's the point of, hey, here is the issue. Yeah, it's a big red flag, I know, and things, it's that point of like, it's tough to, it's tough to say, and I know that if I just say something that I don't like or don't think is a great model is a scam, that can tank a completely legitimate project. So I hope you can see that it's a little difficult for me to just say scam, 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 scam when there could be valid reasons for it. So, but that's part of why I've been working on putting this whole organization together and getting better standards in place and working on that process to better report on it. That way we can be absolutely sure, hey, here is what's going on, here is the risk, and by getting the work from, Cover and OnReach, then there's something to back up where I can say, look, I'm not saying this is a scam, but I'm saying this is enough of a risk that these two groups don't want to insure this product because of this risk. Which then is a nice middle ground to say, I'm not saying it's a scam, but I am saying that it's enough of a risk that these insurance companies won't do that. So, there we go. Eris, yes, Eris was the Greek god of discord and chaos. And why I didn't name a project after that? Because to be honest, I'm doing some interesting things with the dex pair balances behind the scenes that cause a little bit of chaos. So, Eris. And then that kind of prompted to, and I've been holding on to the Mimir Solutions domain name and DAO through Oregon for a couple of years now. And then I'm like, well, I've got one thing named after a Norse god, and I'm working on another thing named after a Greek god. Fuck it, I should just rename chains to Pantheon and do it that way. So, that core LGE3, cool. Good for them. Like I said, Core's always been a decent project. The only risk I called out was that they had that emergency withdrawal function. I said it was an issue, but, it worked out okay. In fact, there's an example of where there's a giant risky function, and I did call out it was a risk, but I couldn't say it was a scam, and it worked out okay. So, kind of hard to judge solidly on either side. So, that's where we're working on setting those standards, and then we'll have the insurance to fall back on. That way I can say something like, hey, that's a risk, but it's not a security vulnerability. but it's enough of a risk that the insurance guys don't want to cover it. So, decide on that as you will, As far as Core's LGE3, good for them. I always said they were a great project. Dev, for some reason, didn't fucking like me. I have no idea why. I had even asked to work with them, but they actually blew me off and then proceeded to insult me a shit ton for I don't know why. So I wanted them to be involved in Mimir, but they hate me for some reason. Whatever. Moving on. Yeah, just go buy Mimir. That's what I'd rather you do. If you want a tip, I'd rather you just go buy Mimir and have Mimir tokens. And then we have funding, we can get you better projects. So, there you go. Otherwise, yeah, that was for Core. Yeah, the C Core, not K Core. Yeah, C Core has had emergency withdrawal functions during their sales where they could just take all the funds out. I don't think it's a good answer because you could easily just close down the sale and then let everyone come get their money back. Like, I actually worked on several designs of that for several other points. So, in fact, that's actually what's in the Mimir sale. If when the sale's over, if we don't hit the minimum ether to make the project viable, at least, with enough funding to actually hire people and get things done. Oh, sure, let me drop the link there. It's as simple as sending ether to the contract. That's it. Like, you don't need to do anything more complicated than that. Just make sure that you turn up the gas limit, not the gas fee, the gas limit, so it can process that. But when it gets to the end, then if we haven't reached the 600 ether minimum necessary to afford the budget to hire all the various people, we'll still be going ahead if we don't hit that point. But I didn't want to take your money and then not have the budget to properly deliver on things. So that's why that minimum's there. I also wanted to make sure that there was enough room in there to make sure that you guys had enough in the treasury that we could work with, and so on. So, yeah, there we are. And so that's, where was I? Right. And so that's where there is that minimum. If we don't hit that minimum, then you can just come back, use the same claim function. If there's, if we didn't hit the minimum, then sorry, there was no successful sell of Mimir. You will just get your Ethereum back. That's it. That I figured was a better way than having an emergency withdrawal that would give me all the money, and then you guys would have to trust me to send that money back out to you. In this case, everything's secure, everything's reliable, it will execute, and if we do not hit the sales target necessary to afford the budget from all the talk I've had with consulting firms and other devs for coming on board and handling this, then we're not going ahead with the sale, and boom, you just get your Ethereum back. Straightforward. No min, no max. That is correct. You can pay whatever little amount you'd like. As far as the CHONKER URL, not a problem. Let me get that for you too. It's literally chonker.finance, but let me pull that up. So please go over to CHONKER. I'm auditing the contracts pre-release. So to be clear, the new farm isn't just open yet, but that is where they will be getting these contracts out relatively soon. You will be able to farm, and I will be following up with announcements when that is done, and that is when we will have the next giveaway of the next NFT of mine. Or sorry, the other NFT of mine, alright? So, with that, I do have things I need to get to, so I apologize that I can't come and hang out all the time. I got meetings coming up later today, more dev work to do. Gotta talk to the front-end guys, since I gave them those last few changes, and that delayed things a bit, because I don't do front-end dev work, so I didn't really properly appreciate how big a change it was. But I think it's important enough, so we'll get that in. And so that way we'll have the site up later this evening. And so right now, you can just send Ethereum to the address that I said before, and from there, you'll be able to come back later on and claim that, and we will have the site up to properly facilitate that. And if something horrible happens in the 3 days the sale is going on, and like the front end dev gets hit by a bus or something or whatever, that's fine. You can still do it through Etherscan. I will be back with the info on how to handle that. It literally is just the claim function, so like it's straightforward right there. But I'll make sure to cover that. All right. Otherwise, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. Thank you, CHONKER, for giving me room to talk about my own project a little bit. For CHONKER's project, that was really just because it's simple, it's straightforward. It is not a complicated process. I mean, you are staking to earn NFTs. It is not a complicated process. They kept it simple. Therefore, there is really no chance of anything going wrong. They implemented everything properly. They used the standard non-reentrant solution. They are doing all of their math correctly, moving the zeros, the decimal point around when, because we don't technically have decimal points appropriately. So, I mean, it was a pretty quick and straightforward one. If you want to see more on the CHONKER one, you can just go back to the beginning of the video. I made sure to handle that right off the bat. And otherwise, that's it. Go stake your chonk. Go stake your chonk. Go get your NFTs. If you got something to spare, throw it in mine for Mimir. Sale's going for 3 days. It will be listed in liquidity upcoming at the end of the 3 days. And the extra tokens that are going to be distributed out to the community treasury and held by the DAO board for any future work. Things like if we want to have another sale to get more funding, if we want to, actually technically we can't burn some, but if we need to do more buybacks, if we need to grant out more tokens, those will be available. The community will be able to vote on that. So, bam, off it goes. Oh, staking already. Cool. Fantastic. And there are more NFTs coming from CHONKER. Like I said, I've been talking with them. I like their style. I like their artwork. It's that nice mix of, edgy yet still safe for work, yet still, somewhat, professional looking. In the sense that, like, I could see that in a business setting, like it's not so untoward like some of the NFTs out there. And so that's why I was talking to them about promotion. So we're working on some promotional ideas. Been talking about like a NFT loot box idea. And again, that's a point for buying in on Mimir. We're going to have special promotions for the pre-sale buyers. It's just exactly what that is will be tuned to each of the projects as they come out. So hard to give a solid answer. Like I really can't say exactly what it'll be because we'll be defining that based on what's good for each of the projects. But things that could be example would be like airdrops, would be like buyback programs at special rates for the early buyers, would be exclusive access to like pre-sales to be able to purchase things. And don't think I've forgotten about anyone that did the early donation for Audit DAO. I still have those addresses. There will still be a special access for that. Where just, as you see, there's been a lot of work because I don't want to just throw out a token and have it sit there languishing and you guys having spent money on it and then I take, like 6 months to get something done. I want to make sure I got a design in place, I got a roadmap I can work on, I got a budget I can work with, and got the deals in place to go forward with that. So, bam, there you go. Otherwise, thank you, everyone. I do have things I need to get to, so I will have to end the stream and get going on that. Otherwise, I hope your holidays were good. I hope your upcoming holidays are good. And we will definitely be doing more of the live streams once we get more of this ball rolling. And I can get some staff to handle some of the things and I can free up some time. Especially as we get more auditors trained and on board. That way I can come back and do the reports to you guys of the various audits that are completed. Alright, so. Well, about Eris. Eris is in the... There is also the document here. Whoops. That is the proposal for the DAO, the initial one. The site will have more information. That is coming up this evening. The site will have more information on each of the projects where I'll fill in each of those. So you can definitely read more about Eris. Best way to think of Eris is that Pantheon is a kind of a massive asset management DeFi version of a mutual fund called a mutual pool coordinated trading platform, and Eris is going to be one of the reserve currencies for that. We're going to have several. That's also where things like Ample and VLO come in. Priya, I've already talked with Mantis about that. They like the idea, and so that's a lot of stuff there. Otherwise, thank you very much. I will be seeing you guys around. Follow me on Twitter. I will be doing my usual rants and raves there, and I will be working on getting back to the live streams as soon as we possibly can. Just need to get the ball rolling on these projects, get staff in place, and finish negotiating some deals. Like, I gotta meet with Cover later today and hammer out some of those last points. So, thank you, everyone. And, oh, RFI, unfortunately, RFI is closed source. They retained all rights to their code. And so I can't. I've been burned too often by closed source code. I mean, like, literally, the first billion I got, I lost years ago because of a lawsuit from closed source code. So, nothing personal there, but sorry, closed source, your source is closed, and yet people can see it. I'm fine with proprietary algorithms. I can't work with closed source code. So, if you've got, like, a trading bot, if you've got some sort of analysis tool and you got a special algorithm, cool. Keep your algorithm secret. But your code needs to be open. Period. Like, I'm not working with closed source code. That's it. It's too much of a legal liability. I'm upset that I even looked at the code. Fortunately, I've got enough of a commit history and enough evidence that I was working on pretty much the same model, actually damn near the same implementation, long before they ever came out, so I should be reasonably covered there. I don't don't wish them any ill will. It's perfectly fine. They got their business strategy. They can do that. I disagree because I've been working with Red Hat and JBoss from, like, founding. So, and working with open source my entire career. It's built everything. So, but this isn't an ideological point. It is my assessment of too much of a legal liability. I'm sorry. Would normally like to, just simply can't. If they want to open source their code, then we can get that done. We can record the modification of the license on the blockchain. I'll even mint a special NFT that declares that there was a change in the license and deposit that on the contract. But as long as any blockchain code is closed source, I cannot work with them. We can trade with them. We can even hold a sale to accept their token, if that's fine, but I can't work with them. I'm taking the extreme artist route. That is kind of a long-term thing with artists, like authors, movie writers, movie producers, where, like, they don't read unsolicited work. So, like, if you just send your manuscript to an author to ask what you think, they literally aren't going to read it. It's just going in the trash. If you just send your script off to a movie producer, then they're not reading it. They might have someone below them read it to see if it's any good, but the vast majority of entertainment professionals, and even the vast majority of software professionals at that high level, don't look at unsolicited work and don't even look at closed source code, because they want to be able to say honestly and forthrightly in court, I never looked at that. So that way, if later on they accidentally implement the same thing, or they accidentally write the same story, then they can quite honestly say, and they can look at their policy of saying, I never look at unsolicited work, I never look at closed source code, I never consult with closed source teams, then to add that extra bit of veracity to the point of, there is no way that I could have stolen their work, I didn't know their work existed. This is parallel development. So, as I said, it's unfortunate, but I have to take that stance, and I've had, this is not new. This is a stance I've worked by for the past 20 fucking years. So, 20 years now, I have not touched any closed source code, not talked to any closed source teams, have not consulted with any closed source developers. It's just too much of a legal liability. I'm sorry. We can trade with them, we can accept their tokens as deposit and all of that, but I just can't talk to them until they open source their code, period. Sorry. So, with that, pre-rolled cigarettes. I buy them by the carton. Anyway, with that, I will leave you, and as I said, I got many things to get to. So, happy holidays, everyone. I hope they've been good.